Welcome to I Had to Say It, the podcast where I talk about things that I feel need talking about, and sometimes they're not getting the attention they deserve. And your feelings, they're not under consideration. The podcast you are about to listen to contains at least one of the following: strong language, disturbing topics, abusive opinions, generally things that aren't appropriate for little kids or overly sensitive people. So, if any of that stuff's going to get your nose out of joint, this is your chance to turn it off.
Join me, 48 Hours correspondent Erin Moriarty, on my podcast, My Life of Crime, as I take on true crime investigations like no other. This season, I'm looking into the labyrinth of crime and secrets within families. I'm cutting straight to the evidence and talking to the people directly involved, including investigators and the families of victims. Listen to My Life of Crime with Erin Moriarty wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of I Had to Say It. Joining me today is Ian, the host of Whisky podcast, and I'm going to give him a chance to tell you about his show. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. First off, it's an honor to be here. I've listened to the show for quite a while now, and I'm super stoked. So thank you for the opportunity to just come and hang out. This is awesome. Why Whiskey can be found. It's a bi-weekly show where we drink and we tell stories about old dead guys and girls. And I have guests, and again, we drink a lot. So come check us out. We're on all the podcast platforms. Wherever you can find it, search Why Whiskey and you'll find us.
Very well put. As I say, without this turning into a giant, like, oh, you're awesome. No, you're awesome. I actually listen to your show too because I happen to enjoy whiskey and history. So it's a a very fitting combination. I was like, all right, this is cool. This sounds like something I could check out. And then when you start talking about different whiskeys and different cool historical shit, and I was just like, all right, I'm in. I'm down with this one. So it's great to have you here.
Thanks again. I appreciate it, man. And it's been a lot of fun. I started the whole thing just on a whim. I've always been a history guy, and I talked about it a bunch on the show. But fell in love with history in middle school, and it's been a constant thing in my life. And then I got introduced in whiskey through my time in the military, and that became the second passion. And then come to find out that both American history and whiskey are very interconnected, very, very interconnected in a lot of ways. So it's like, all right, I can do both at the same time, and it's just fucking awesome. So I'm in.
And it's very cool when it works out like that.
Yeah, certainly is.
Yeah, I actually, I was just getting caught up with like today's episode, the most recent episode, I should say. I've been kind of lax in my listening to everybody for the last few days. Having been on vacation, I literally unplugged from pretty much everything.
Good for you.
For like a week. I needed a reset. The holidays were around. I had a massive honeydew list to work my way through, and I was like, normally I would be listening to shows while I was at work, but I just need to disconnect from social media and pretty much everything for a little bit. And, kind of tackle the liquor cabinet for a while, because as I said, I am also a fan of whiskey.
Yes, sir.
And it makes the chores a little more bearable,
It really does. And that's one of the best things about the holidays. And when you get that time off, you can just literally drink all the time, and it's totally okay. A glass of whiskey while we were opening presents on Christmas morning, nobody batted an eye. I was like, all right, I'm in my happy place.
It's gonna be a good day.
Yeah.
I've developed a habit of spiking my coffee in the morning if I don't have anywhere better to be. So,
yes. Have you messed with bourbon creams at all?
A little bit. Not as much as I would like.
Yeah.
I'm always up for recommendations.
So the Buffalo Trace one is very good.
Okay.
I'll have to go back through my list, and I'll shoot you a couple of other ones that I have recently tried that are also there's one out of Texas. I forget what the name of it is. But I ran out really quickly because it was so good. But yeah, a little bourbon cream in the coffee in the morning is the way to start the day. Screw that Cheerios shit. Like,
no. Little leaded coffee
Yes, sir.
starts the day off on the right. I actually, for a while, I was doing just because I happened to have a big ass bottle. I had the 175 of the Vanilla Crown,
Okay.
and that goes really nicely in a cup of coffee as well. It also makes good pancakes if
So
you're
that I've
feeling adventurous.
yeah, so that I've done. But I've not put that in coffee though. So I'm not a big fan of like the flavored stuff. I've had a bottle of this Knob Creek, was it smoked maple? I think forever.
Hmm.
Just because I can't. I mean, it's seriously, it's like drinking maple syrup. It's so sweet. And if maple syrup had like, yeah, it's too much. I want my whiskey to like say, "Hey, how you doing?" and be a little like rough and bitter. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I'm a
it's
salty old guy, so I like that salty old whiskey. So it's
yeah, it's
uh
got to have that character to it.
yeah, yeah, and he slap me around a little bit, call me
Yeah,
dirty names, and then I'm good with it.
exactly. Yeah, no, I don't remember exactly how I got the big ass bottle of Crown Vanilla because I honestly, I don't just flat out don't recall. I just remember it being there, and I was like, okay, what am I gonna do with this? Well, I'm laid off. I'll put it in my coffee because I got it right before the pandemic, like full on set in, where everybody was getting furloughed and work from home. And I'm a chef professionally, right? So my field in 2020 was pretty well decimated.
Yeah,
So I spent a lot of time at home, and
damn,
uh, and like I said, somewhere along the lines, I got this big ass bottle of whiskey, and it was kind of nice because I was working for a contracting company, so I was furloughed, not unemployed technically. So they kept my insurance active and stuff like that, which was cool.
that's good.
But um, yes, that also limited my ability to go look for another job because I had to be available to go back to work if they called me.
Right.
And so I took a bunch of classes, like online classes, because I could do those any time of the day, and if I had to go back to work for a couple days, it didn't screw anything up. But I also started day drinking quite a bit during that.
I think everybody did. There was that period there for a while where it was like I don't know 4 6 weeks, end of March to beginning of May, where the time just kind of stopped for a lot of folks. I know it didn't stop for everybody, but there was a lot of folks where everything just kind of slowed down, and there was much consumption of alcohol during that period of time. It's like,
Yeah,
is the world ending? Are we not? What's happening right now? I don't know. Can we go outside yet? Like, what's Jesus Christ?
being the kind of guy that I am, and the fact that the liquor stores were considered essential businesses, and there's one within staggering distance of my house.
Perfect.
It was like, well, I'm gonna run over here. I did a lot of experimenting, like as far as the maple bourbon goes. If you're, I don't know how culinarily inclined you are, but it sounds like it would actually make a fantastic, like a bacon jam. Now
Probably.
that I think about it,
It probably would. And I think paired with something like salty and like savory, it would be good. But I'm a neat drinker. So like for me, I just pour it in a glass and then I drink it. It's just sugar. Like that's all I'm tasting. It's just so sweet.
yeah, I'm with you. I am either rocks or neat depending on what I'm drinking. But yeah, I don't mix beverages, so I'm the same way. If it's overly sugared, it's not a good look.
No, truth. Truth there. Yeah, and it was one thing that the pandemic did do, or well, I mean, we're still rolling, but uh, one of the cool things that started initially is that you saw a lifting and relaxing of some really old and arbitrary liquor laws, and so now people were able to, you know, uh, take out booze from stores, from like restaurants and stuff, and then the online delivery service for booze kind of blew up, which I was so excited because a lot of times, how allocations and all that stuff for booze goes, it varies so differently between states, and so the state of New York was not having a real good time, but I could hop online in that moment and buy the booze that I couldn't find in New York and have it shipped directly to my house. So not only did I have to go to drive to 7 different stores to look for this one particular bottle, and they literally just brought it straight to the house. And It's freaking wonderful. Paid a little bit more for it, but the convenience factor was well worth it. So that was good.
Definitely. That's one thing one of the ups of the pandemic, because there were a few, I think. But yeah, the reworking of some of those very draconian concepts of, well, no, you can't cross this line with that because it's a controlled substance. It's a bottle of scotch. I should be able to pick it up here and go there and not have to be inconvenienced.
Exactly.
Let's see. Having touched on the pandemic, um, and you are in New York. I'm in the Midwest, so there's a little bit of a difference in there. Um, just from your perspective, because I'm not a huge supporter of necessarily mainstream approaches towards things. How would you say it's going out that way? I mean, I've heard a lot of, or I should say, read a lot of stuff online, but I try to take that with a grain of salt. So every time I talk to somebody, I do kind of go, well, okay, how are things actually going where you are, as opposed to how they're telling us things are going?
Well, so I have I've since the pandemic. So it kicked off. I was in New York. I then got moved up to Boston, and have recently bought a house in Michigan. So currently, I'm in Michigan.
Oh,
I'm
you're in
on.
Michigan now? I
I'm
thought
on.
you were still. I thought you were still out on the East Coast. I'm
No,
sorry.
well, I mean, I technically am. I'm home on vacation. So we bought our home, and we're retiring this year. So we bought the house. The wife and kids are here at the house, getting all this set up. So once my final day is done, just move over and we're good to go. But still stationed in Boston and doing that
Okay.
there. But so I've got to see COVID from two different states on the East Coast, and New York was weird. New York got super dark during the early part of it. These last couple phases, uh, Massachusetts has been very COVID cautious. The area that I'm in, I understand there's different parts of Massachusetts that handle things differently, but the area that I'm in, which is in eastern, like we're kind of just northwest of the city of downtown, and that area has always been very COVID cautious. However, this last month and a half or so, caution hasn't mattered at all, and shit's on fire. Like people are getting it. Even the people who are being super safe, doing all the right things, wearing masks, washing hands, doing all that stuff, they're still getting it. So it's getting crazy again. No, I don't think it's bad. Definitely not as dark because with the first go round, there was a lot of people dying, a lot of people dying, and this time around doesn't seem quite so bad. And I think also fatigue has a lot to play. A lot of people are just sick and tired of dealing with this shit, and they're done with it. So you're seeing a lot of people who were super cautious before, kind of just washing their hands of it and saying, you know what, fuck it. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. Let's roll and see what happens. So it's not as crazy and the world isn't on fire as the news reports kind of make it seem to be. But I don't want to diminish how intense it is currently. It's thick. I guess that's a better term. It's thick right
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's refreshing to hear an actual honest observation from somebody. I mean, it's like, if you've listened to the show, I'm not a huge fan of the accepted socially public narrative,
now. Right.
mostly because I'm just a jaded, cynical old bastard at this point, I guess. I mean, I've just seen way too many instances, and I feel like we've kind of got our social memory is, I mean, we're like one step above Alzheimer's patients when it comes to terms of. That's one of the other reasons why I like the history aspect of your show, is nobody seems to have a retention of more than a few months at this point, where it's like, no, don't you remember this stuff was literally, this is what they were saying 3 months ago, and they're completely contradicting their own reports
Yeah.
based on just trying to put the narrative forward. So that's why I'm always very much an advocate for going out and actually talking to people and having conversations and discourse and being able to say, hey, how do you feel about this? Instead of just going, well, they said this is how everybody should be feeling. And
right?
yeah,
The talking points are ridiculous, and that's that my biggest beef. And I feel like I've said this so much over the last few weeks because I've talked about this quite a bit. My biggest beef has always been the messaging. They have fucked up from day one on the messaging, and it's not consistent. It's not. It seems to flip flop. It seems to it kind of bend and fold to what is needed by certain people at the time. And are we, if we're following the science, then let's follow the science. And where the messaging I think has gotten messed up is that it's just, hey, we're doing this now. They don't give an explanation why they're doing it. They don't say, hey, we've got evidence that says this, 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 and this. This is why we're doing this. They don't do that. They just say, hey, this is what we're doing. And then that's when you scratch your head and you're like, well, that's really different than what we were doing yesterday. What changed? And they don't tell you what changed. And and that's where they kind of drop the ball and they leave. And that just leaves people to their own devices to guess as to why they made the change. And of course, everybody goes into the politics realm and is this science? Is this politics? Are we are the two now like joined at the hip? And if so, like that doesn't really work. It's a mess, man.
yeah, I very much agree. I mean, and also, and this is another one of those things. Like I remember when I was a kid, and yeah, granted that was quite a while ago now. But one of the aspects of science was all about inviting questions and questioning everything. That's how you learn is by questioning the reality.
Yes.
And instead of clamping down on every single opposing viewpoint to try and say this is the facts and saying if and I mean it's one thing to actively disprove an opposing theory, but instead of trying to disprove it, you're just saying you can't say that because it's wrong. And it makes people question the validity of what you're touting as proper or what is right. So I agree. I think they really, dropped the ball on how they present their information and the way they're dealing with any kind of dissenting opinions instead of trying to show some valid logic behind saying the dissension is wrong. They're just saying, no, that's not what we said is right. And yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a shit show as far as how things have been handled. And then they get bent out of shape when people don't want to just blindly trust them. And it's
And those people become the enemy. And that's what really pisses me off is the folks that kind of stand back and say, "Hey, we're not buying it." And not that they're even the folks that are they're not buying it. It's not that they're coming out and saying, "Hey, you're wrong," right? They're just saying, "We don't necessarily believe that because you haven't backed it up. You haven't given us the data sheets. You haven't given us the information." And that's the problem. And what as soon as they do that, they're labeled, right? They're labeled as freaking they're dangerous. They're the it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated, or like that, like those bullshit words that they just kind of throw around. It's like, nah, man, it's not like that. Give us the information, and then let us fucking choose.
yeah. I mean, there's a big difference between just saying no and saying you want to have an educated decision.
Exactly, exactly, and
And
yeah, give us the info. Don't give us your opinion, and that's another major issue with a lot of the mainstream media is that they've stopped reporting news. They've just started. They've all just become opinion pieces. Literally every show, and it's like I don't care what you think or how you feel about this. I just need you to give me the facts. I'll determine how I think and feel about this. And it's so frustrating that people just kind of absorb all that and well, the news said that da 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 da. Yeah, the news also said last week that freaking the sky was green. Is that real?
yeah,
No, it's not fucking real. Like come on, stop it. Just give me the facts and let me decide, and I'll go from there. And that's not a thing, man.
yeah, no, and the sad thing is it's become. I mean, it's like a double edged sword with modern social media. I mean, we're more connected than we have ever been in the history of the planet, which
Yeah,
allows people to compare notes and to say, look, this doesn't add up because you're telling me this, but I can go directly to people and find contradicting information from people that are involved in the thing you're trying to tell me. But the problem with it is it's not. There's way too many like echo chambers where you can find anything online, including stuff to validate whatever ridiculous shit you're coming up with. So the way that the official sources are handling things, instead of like diffusing that situation and saying, "Look, we're being forthright and we're putting all our cards on the table." Instead, it's more just like, "No, you have to trust us because we said so," and they're just fostering this massive discontent. And sorry, my train of thought just completely skipped the tracks.
You know, you were on a roll, man. I'm with you. I was right there. Like like yeah,
Yeah,
let's get it. Let's go.
but
Let's
I
go.
mean,
But yeah.
it really is though. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
for lack of a better way of putting it, it's when you're demanding unquestioning faith, you're no longer presenting things as science or as facts. At that point, that's a religion. That's not a. If you want unquestioning, unwavering acceptance without backing your shit up, it's that's a dangerous handcart to get into. You know.
absolutely 100%. And not that's not the ride I'm in for. Like I'm not about that, you know. Reagan's quote, you know, what are the most dangerous? Oh, I'm going to fuck it up. I don't want to fuck it up. Anyway, he said, let me summarize. He says something along the lines of, the most dangerous words are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Right. And I feel like that's a thing. You know what I mean? You gotta stop. And one of the scariest things about this whole pandemic has been the amount of control, right? That on behalf of public health or under the guise of public health, they took a lot of control over a lot of things. And I mean, eventually, right? Science, if we're still listening to science, says this thing will fizzle or become endemic, and it's just going to be something that we live with, like the flu. So uh in which case we have to go back to the way, not the way things were, because I don't think we ever will be able to do that. But we've got to go back to uh, less amounts of control and more amounts of ability to do things. The government going into a private business and saying you cannot do this. You saw it with gyms, you see it with restaurants, and the vaccine passports and all those things. And before I make a hypocrite of myself, um, I am vaccinated and I have no issues at all showing my card to go into a restaurant to have a meal if they require it. Like I'm not one of those, stand outside and yell at people kind of people. Like, that's not my bag. But I do believe, because I'm choosing to eat there. So if I'm choosing to eat there, I have to abide by what the business is telling me to do. And and that's just a thing. So but I don't think the government should be able to say, look, you can't do this, you can't do that if it's a private business, right? If that private business is willing to take the risk of whatever, and they're not like hiding it, like they're public about it, like, hey, you're taking a risk by coming to eat here because we choose not to be vaccinated, if that's a thing. But even though the vaccines are not proving to be real effective over this latest go around, um,
Yeah, well, and neither are the masks either. From
exactly, exactly, so I get the public health thing, but at a point in time, they got to pull back and say, okay, cool, go do your thing.
yeah, well, that's one of my concerns. Is just speaking historically, governments are really good at taking control. They're not so hot at giving it back. You know?
No, no, and it's usually through a climactic event that involves some type of violence that
Yeah,
that we see, and that's scary, man. That's a little nerve wracking, because you kind of see, just looking across the landscape, we're so divided as a nation right now, and the folks up at the top aren't helping any of that. The folks I'm gonna pull myself in a little bit here.
yeah,
So 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 yeah, we're very divided, and the camps are getting angrier, and that's unsettling.
yeah. It definitely is. I mean, I honestly, I'm of the mindset personally where I would be so okay if I had the resources, I would go so far off the grid right now just to wait and see which way it was going to blow. unfortunately, I don't. I still have to go to work, and where I work is not within easy commuting distance of any sort of remote area. That's the whole point of remote areas is that they're not easy to commute to.
Right.
So, and ironically enough, uh, I the job I currently have, I got, mid pandemic. I started the second week of January of last year. So I'm actually just coming up on my 1 year anniversary at this company. I love my job. It's a fantastic job. It's a great work environment. I have really cool coworkers. The upper level management staff is amazing. I have I have a couple minor complaints, but it's nothing I can lay directly on my employers. One of the factors being in Illinois here, when the governor said uh, we're mandating the vaccinations if you're in certain fields, and my job now is considered a healthcare. Well, technically, my position is like healthcare adjacent because
Gotcha.
I'm still doing culinary stuff, and I'm not opposed to vaccinations. I'm just opposed to being forced into things.
Right.
But I didn't. Like I said, I got this awesome job. I didn't want to lose it, so I got my shots, and on top of which, technically, my house is zoned in a area that's zoned commercially, so I could uh, you know, use that commercial grade equipment and start selling beef jerky out of my garage or something.
I'm in. I say we start
Little
the
side
petition.
hustle.
Yeah, I was to say. I say we start the petition right now. Get Aaron his kitchen. Let's do this. I want
Yeah,
the I
but
want the beef jerky. No,
although
I hear.
that may be that like I said, I do have a couple little side hustles I've been piecing together and looking into Illinois' like cottage industry laws and stuff like that for like because there are a lot of local people that started selling like jams and cakes and cake pops and hot chocolate bombs and all sorts of fun homemade candies and things like that. And I'm like, "Yeah, how much sales can I really get away with before I'm no longer considered a cottage industry? Because then you have to start, meeting, health department regulations and all this other stuff."
And taxes become a thing. Did you see the new? It's hitting like goods and services through some of the virtual like pay sites. I think of Venmo is one of them. Oh, I don't know if we can say
Oh,
brand names on your show.
oh
Oh yeah,
yeah.
but
If it ever comes to the point where I get like a C&D order over a brand name, I will chop that 30 seconds of audio right out of the file.
all right.
So
Some people get weird about that, but yeah. So there's like a lot of those.
I'm not important enough to worry about that stuff.
Same. I love it. It's great. Being mildly anonymous is kind of fun. But
Yeah.
no. So they just passed that new thing with the digital money services to where like anything $600 or more, you're now going to get like a 1099.
Yeah, and
Like
it's
taxable
$600
income.
cumulative over the course of a year.
Yeah, which
It's
is
like,
crazy
ugh.
because I mean I send my kids money all the time. I think that'd be like
Yeah, I was gonna
a
say
couple months.
just
Yeah.
just transferring money to my kid is gonna wind up getting him a 1099. Like, that's income. I'm like, no, no, it's not. That's
It's a
dad.
gift. Yeah, like that's
That's dad.
yeah.
And not to mention, I reminded my son he still had his high school checking account that like had like $10 in it. And I said, dude, start using your Chase account because it's still set up as a high school checking account. I still have access to it. I can just transfer money directly from my account to your account without having to deal with any of those services. And then you don't have to worry about it. And so
Perfect.
he's like, yeah, good idea. I should do that. So he changed over like his direct deposit for his job and stuff. And so occasionally, like when I'm taking, we have a couple agreements where like, he has to pay his share of the cell phone bill because my son is technically an adult at this point, and he stays on the family plan. So, because, and he's not getting off the family plan anytime soon because he keeps upgrading his phone every time he gets a chance.
We do we have the same kids? Because
Uh,
we're doing I mean literally the same thing. Four of my five are into adulthood, so they pay for their lines, but we keep them all on the plan to keep all that rolling.
yeah, well, that's what we're doing too. And he gets a cheap cell phone that way.
Yeah,
And the only problem is his share of the bill is still like $60 because he's got an iPhone 12 and and instead of just buying it outright, he went into the store one day and just like, I want to upgrade my line. And they called me like, is it okay with you if your son upgrades your line? And I'm like, he's 21. I don't care. He can upgrade his line. Yeah. And so next thing I know, I see the next bill and I'm like, oh,
Maybe not.
that's why they wanted me to know if it was okay. Yeah. So I called him up. I'm like, dude, you realize your phone bill's going up, right? And he just kind of laughed. He's like, I just thought I'd see how long I could get away with it before you noticed. I'm like,
Thanks,
you
Dick.
nice. Yeah. I mean, like you do realize your old man is one of the cheapest bastards on the planet, right? I go through the bill every month, even though it doesn't change. And yeah, so I I'll pop in there when the bill's due and just take his share of the bill out of there. And I noticed I was like, you and your girlfriend have a lot of cash transactions back and forth between each other using PayPal. What's the deal with that? And he's like, well, if she needs a few bucks for something, I send it to her. If I need a few bucks for something, she sends it to me. I said, okay, if you guys are going to start doing things like that with this new tax law, you really need to reassess that because you're already at like $250 of transactions, and it's the first week of January. What the
Damn.
fuck?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well, she needed this and she was short, so I sent her the money and then she paid me back. And I'm like, yeah, but they don't look, the government's not looking at that. They're just looking at your overall flow of cash.
Right.
And I was like, I mean, if you guys are going to do that, and I was like, I'm never encouraging this. I'm not telling you to get a joint checking account, but maybe get a mutual account that you guys both have a debit card to, and don't keep your main funds there, but that's how you can transfer money back and forth to each other. I mean, there's got to be workarounds for families on this. Otherwise, it's going to get ridiculously abused.
And if I read it right, it seems as though it is mainly focused on the goods and services. So when you're paying like stores, so there's a lot of stores that are reverting back to cash or check that were using like the Square card readers and Venmo and all those other ones.
Yeah, and like Apple Pay and all that stuff.
Yeah, so there's a lot of those that are reverting back to cash and check sales to avoid that, which I think is a good idea. But if you're not paying attention, and I've done it before, like I'm just, oh shit, let me send some money quick to my daughter, and I don't look, and next thing I know, I'm sending her $100 for goods and services, and I was like, oh shit, that counts. Yeah. So I think as long as you're using the family thing, but if they're allowed to look, you know what I mean, then then they get to look at everything, and eventually I think that will catch up. I think if it'll come to, if you're receiving money, regardless of whether it's goods or services or friends and family or whatever it's called, you're going to get zapped eventually for it. And that's where I like breakfast, but like I'll take the team out for breakfast. Right. And it's just easier when there's a bunch of us to just keep it all on one bill, and then everybody just kind of like toss their cash. Well, this Venmo thing is a thing. So like on a bigger bill, you've got a whole bunch of people paying you like little parts and pieces for a bigger bill. And it's like, don't do that. Just, when you get a chance, give me cash.
When you get it.
Yeah.
No
rush.
You're at the grocery store, hit cash back, get me that 20.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't send this shit over digital stuff anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want them looking.
Well, I don't want them looking. Plus, I don't want to be paying tax on money that I was already taxed on for transferring the money to buy something that I'm also going to pay taxes on. I mean, it's getting to be a little much.
I agree.
It's like, and I don't. I always feel like I'm like every episode I'm bitching about the government somehow, and I'm like, well, that's a lot of what's making me grouchy these days. But I have this issue where it's like, why do you need to worry about my finances? You spent $14 trillion more than you had available to yourself. If I ran my house like that, I would be homeless, probably unemployed, and like living in a shelter somewhere because they would take my house away, they would take my job away, and I'd be fucked. And instead, they're just going, no, we need a little bit more of what you earned. And it just doesn't sit right with me.
No, and the whole like the debt ceiling thing, and I'm going to be the first one to admit that I really don't know how that all works. I've been told a couple different times, but generally the terms that are used to describe it are pretty elaborate. And this knuckle dragon army dude just kind of scratches his head and says, "I don't speak big words." So, so it's a little beyond me, but it seems odd that we can just simply like, I mean, can we just call our banks and be like, "Hey, I need my credit limit increased by like 10 grand if you could, please." I don't think it works
Yeah.
that way. I feel like like,
Generally, no. I mean,
but
you
the
get
banks don't print the money, the government does. So they're just like, "Oh yeah, we need 14 million new George Washington bills. Let's get them."
yeah. It's the ironic thing is actually before I decided to go into the culinary world professionally, I actually do understand a lot of this stuff because I was originally a finance major the first time I went to college, and
Shit, I need to sit down with you some more then. We need to talk a little bit off air too.
yeah, I mean my information's a little dated, but like when I was pandemicing and thinking about changing lines of work because I was like, well, maybe the service industry is dead because one of the reasons I decided to be a chef in the first place was, yeah, no, no matter how bad things get, people are always going to want to eat. And
True.
then I found out, I guess not. And yeah, I mean, fortunately, I was a little more insulated than a lot of people because I went into like corporate services sector and stuff like that. So it was a
Gotcha.
little more insulated as opposed to like restaurant industry that was just hammered so hard. I was actually, it's kind of funny when I did finally get laid off and after several months of being unemployed and when things started reopening around here, I had like three different guys come ask me if I wanted to run their properties because they had restaurants and they had chefs, but they lost their chefs. And then they were like, "Hey, Aaron knows how to run a restaurant. You want to come run my restaurant?" And I'm like, "I got a desk job, man. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I work Monday through Friday. I'm off the clock by like 5, sometimes 6. Depends if the day runs late. If I have to deal with somebody out on the West Coast, then I might be there as late as 7. But that's a very rare occurrence. I mean, sometimes I have to talk to somebody in like Colorado, and I have to stay late an hour. It's not going to be the end of the world for me.
Right.
So, and I'm like, I don't have to worry about angry customers yelling at me. I mean, the people I talk to are all professionals. I'm working at my job's more like a support capacity at this point. Like I said, I do menu development and recipe testing and product testing. So yeah, I mean, I got one guy in particular, bless his little heart. Every time I talk to him, like, if I ever get out there, you and me are going for cocktails. Like, cocktails, hell, I'll show you how we drink out here. Like, all right, sound challenge accepted. I mean, shit, I'm from Wisconsin. Drinking's sort of what we do. Because
It's a lot of
honestly,
what y'all do.
yeah, I was gonna say because really there ain't much else to do. I mean, we got cheese and we got beer and we got cows, brandy old fashions and whiskey old fashions.
I was in Sparta, Wisconsin.
Okay, yeah,
Uh,
that is a place.
okay. Yeah. So we were doing some training in the area, and it was a tiny little town, and this tiny little town had like 7 bars, and I was like, this is amazing. My tiny little town had 2, and I think actually my town was a little bit bigger than this place, but and all 7 of these bars were incredibly active. So
Oh yeah, I know.
so there.
Steam table lunches and
Oh, it was awesome. It's absolutely awesome. So, I mean, you do a pub crawl on a Tuesday night, just a random Tuesday night, not anything special, and there's literally it's full of different people at every place, and I was like, this is the scene I need to get into. I would get in trouble.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's a little different when you grow up there, I guess. Because
Probably.
I'm just like, yeah. I mean, if you're familiar with, thanks to a lot of what's gone on in the last couple of years, Kenosha, Wisconsin. That's actually my hometown. That's where I'm from.
Oh
Uh,
shit.
yeah, I recognized a lot of the shit that was on fire when I was watching live streams and stuff while the riots were going on. Um, I actually the car lot where the Kyle Rittenhouse shooting happened, there's an a brownstone apartment building immediately behind that building that I spent a whole lot of nights in a very unsober state. um, so I'm watching everything that's going on there, and like I still have friends there. I still have a lot of family there, and I was like on the phone, like, "Are you guys okay?" It's like the ride is like 6 blocks from your house. Are you going to be all right? Are you guys bailing? What are you doing? There was a lot of concern going on there. But the whole point I was going to say behind this is when I was a kid and I was growing up there, uh, we used to have the AMC Motors plant was there, and then later Chrysler brought out AMC, and it was a Chrysler plant. So this was a town full of auto union workers and steel workers and shipping workers. They were all union. They all had an hour break for lunch. And so that whole area was lined with pubs. Just every other corner was a bar and grill kind of scenario where you could go in there, you could get a couple of sandwiches and like a couple of beers. It would be $5, and then you eat. And that would be your lunch, and then you go back to work and go back to putting cars together. And it was just a totally different culture, I guess, because to
Yeah.
me that was perfectly normal. When I moved to Illinois, where I live now, and I was just like, I was trying to figure out where the closest bar to where I lived was, and it was like 3 freaking miles. I was like, what is this shit?
That's a long, painful stumble out,
Yeah,
home from the
that's
bar.
I can't walk that far. I'm gonna get in trouble. And the ironic thing is, I moved down here at like 22, for various reasons that I was fleeing Wisconsin, and I moved back in with my mom and my stepdad. So like literally the first night I was in town, I'm like, where's the pub? And my stepdad's like, oh, here's where the closest one I think you would enjoy is. And I'm like, why? What do you mean the closest one you think I would enjoy? And he's like, well, if you go to the closer one, it's full of fucking hipsters, and I know it's not going to go well for you. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. I can't really argue that. And he goes, yeah, I know they annoy the Christ out of me too. And I'm like, all right, cool. My stepdad and I get along pretty well. And he's like, now if you go down this street and you go about 3 miles, you're gonna find this really nice upholstered toilet seat of a bar. And I was like, my people,
My-
thank you, because it really is. It is upholstered toilet seat is the best description I've ever heard of it, because it's kind of gross but still kind of comfortable.
That's perfect. That is a
Yeah,
perfect descriptor. And those are the places that like I love to go. And I my brother and I we've got another project called the Tavern in Question that we do, and we look a lot into bar and pub culture and those types of things. And those are the places where you've got the locals, right? But you don't have like the shitty locals, like the snobby snooty ones, right? You got the ones where you walk in, everybody's like, hey, they have no idea who you are, but they're
yeah,
just
they're just
happy that
happy to see you.
somebody else is there, right?
Yep.
And those places where you go in and you can sit down at a stool and you can listen to like this dude's whole life story, and then have some other crazy conversation going on, and it's just that type of environment is absolutely beautiful. And I hope that once all this weirdness with whatever this virus thing is settled or whatever, we can go out and we can start experiencing that type of shit again, because those memories, those pictures, that time in those places is priceless. And I feel so like we're missing out. And there's a whole lot of people that are missing out. And there's a whole lot of people that could really use a good night at one of those bars. Like the
Oh,
kind where
without
you're
a
like,
doubt.
oh, we're dragging your ass out of there because you're hammer drunk, right? And
Yeah.
you were on the freaking bar singing topless, right? And it was amazing, right? Where
Yeah.
you just need that night to unwind and go crazy, and nobody in that building is going to judge you.
Yeah,
And
nobody's
that's
gonna give a shit.
Yep,
They're gonna
nobody cares.
woo.
Yep. They're going to take their shirts off and wave them around their head too. Like it's great. Like, you know what I mean? And we need those types of environments so much. So hearing you call that the upholstered toilet seat, it's fucking perfect. I love that. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
well, it's like I said, it's the best descriptor I've ever heard to describe that particular establishment, and it was great too because after I started going there, and after I got a job and stuff, it was close enough to my job. It was like perfect midpoint between my job and my house. So I wound up spending a lot more time there, particularly as somebody who was relatively new to the area. I didn't know a lot of people. I was like, yeah, this is great. I will stop here. I will make friends with all these surly old bastards. Maybe one of them has a daughter my age. It'll be great. And it got to the point where like I started getting phone calls at the bar, and this was, early 2000s. It's like, yeah, I had a cell phone, but I didn't turn that bitch on because it was like $2 a minute. So, I'd be like, call me back after 9. And
Right.
so I
Today's
would
kids
be,
don't know anything about that.
yeah, spoiled little bastards.
Bastards.
But yeah, I was sitting at the bar one day and I was nursing a pint of Guinness and, because, it was still like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I didn't feel right starting on whiskey until 5. So I wanted to be able to make sure I got home for dinner without getting yelled at by my mother. And so, yeah, I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, the phone starts ringing, and the bartender's big old walking slab of beef named Otto. He's like, "Yep, yep, yeah, no, he's here." And he hands me the phone, and I'm like, "Hello? What the fuck's going on? I'm getting phone calls at the bar now, and it's my boss." And he's like, "How did I know you'd be there?" Because it's only 3:45. And he's like, "It's Tuesday." Yeah, but it's still only 3:45. He's like, "How are you always at the bar?" I'm like, it's a Wisconsin thing. I mean, that was like my default for like the first 3 years where I lived here. Like, it's a Wisconsin thing. I'm gonna have a couple pints and maybe grab a sandwich, and then I'm gonna go home and have dinner with the family. It's expected.
Yep.
And he's like, "Oh, well, just stay there. I want to talk to you." Well, you're talking to me now. He's like, "No, I'll be right there." 10 minutes later, my boss comes walking in the bar, sits down in a seat next to me. We start going over a bunch of stuff. Next thing you know, it's like 11:30, and his fiance is walking into the bar. Like, "How did I know you two assholes would be here?" And I'm like, "It's his fault." And she's like, "Ironically, that's the exact same thing he's going to say as soon as I load him into the car. Is that it's your fault?" I'm like, "I was here minding my own business. I didn't drag him with." Because honestly, I was kind of scared of his wife or fiance at the time. I was like,
Well, I
she's
mean,
like,
meanwhile, your poor mother's at home going, "Where the fuck is Aaron for dinner?" It's 11 o'clock at night.
"Yeah, no, I didn't do that real often." I don't know what and this place was great too. Like they had like wood paneling on all the walls, but for some odd reason they also paneled the doors to the bathrooms. So they blended in with the wall, and as the night progressed, you could tell people were getting more fucked up because they would walk into the wrong parts of the wall. And
Yes.
yeah, one of my coworkers went there with me one night, and he thought he was the man because we happened to be standing right by where the ladies' room was, and he didn't realize it because, like I said, he couldn't pick out the door. But like every girl in the bar came walking by, and he's talking to all of them, like, "Hey, how you doing? Yeah, hey, what's up? You came over, huh? Yeah, no, this is my. You must know my buddy because this is my first time here." And okay, hey, I'll talk to you later. And he did not realize they were all just going to the bathroom, and I didn't have the heart to tell him. I'm like, eh, yeah, no, you're the man, bud. They never do that when it's just me.
Nope. You got this. Keep going.
Yeah, keep trying. One of them might take the bait.
Yeah.
And it was funny too because that guy actually lived closer to the bar than I did, which I found completely ironic. Because when the end of the night was rolling around, and he obviously was not. I didn't realize before we went to the bar that he really wasn't much of a drinker, but I realized it before the night was over. I was like, "Bro, are you okay?" And he's like, "I don't know how you come to work every day. How do you function like this?" I'm like, "It's only like 8:30, bro. It's not even early. It's not even late yet. We've been here for 5 hours." Yeah, and
And
he's like, "I gotta go home. I can't fuck with you no more. I'm not drinking with people from Wisconsin no more." I'm like, "All right, you want to ride, man? You ain't driving." I'm like, where do you live? I mean, how? He's like, I live across the street. It's like, oh, okay. It still took him like 25 minutes to make it home. It was. He's like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. He walked out the front door. He leaned on the stop sign for like 5 minutes. Waited for the light to change. Got across the street. Sat down. I was like,
We just survived a traumatic crossing of a linear
yeah.
danger area. So
It was pretty special, and it was funny too because the next day we're at work, and this is like I said, I was in my early 20s, and I had a very significant nicotine addiction, and so I was like, I'm sitting in the back alley behind the building before work starts at like 5:30 in the morning, having a cigarette, waiting for the delivery truck to show up, and he comes in just looking like death warmed over, and I'm just like, "Hey, bud, how you doing?" "Fuck you, Aaron." "Okay, I'll catch you later, man." He goes into the house, or he goes into the building, and I put out my cigarette and I go in and I go punch in, and I'm talking to our boss, and he walks by me. "Fuck you, Aaron." I'm like, all right. Well, you want a Gatorade? And my boss just looks at me. He's like, "What did you do to him?" Like, he came out drinking with us last night. He's like,
he's mad at me for his own bad decisions. I don't know.
"Well, why does he keep saying fuck? What did you do?" I'm like, "I didn't do nothing. I let him have a few drinks. I didn't tell him he was hanging out next to the ladies' room. And then he staggered home. You let him walk?" I'm like, "He lives across the street." "Oh, well, that shouldn't be that bad." I'm like, "It took him a half hour to get home." And then my boss starts laughing. And he's like, "Yeah, well, I know what happens when people drink with you." I'm like, "Yeah."
I got the title of Grandpa Bad Influence from Jamie. Do you? I don't know if you're familiar with Jamie and Heath Britt. They have the E14 podcast.
Okay, I am familiar with the podcast. I haven't really interacted with them directly too much, but
Oh,
I am aware of it.
yeah, you should. They're fantastic folks. So I hosted them on the show, and we did a whiskey tasting while we talked about Navy history, and Jamie was not ready. She was not. She was not ready. She didn't do liquor. He's the champ. He was fine, but apparently we drank a lot, and she had shit to do the next morning. So she's been a little salty with me since then. So
Well,
yeah, she drops the bad influence thing whenever she gets a chance on me.
yeah. Well, I had it was actually funny. I had a gal I worked with at one of the places I worked over the course of the years. Little tiny little thing. She's maybe 5'3", 5'4". Constantly just thought she was this, Rottweiler of a human being, just big old badass, and going around, "I'm gonna drink everybody here under the table," and blah 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 blah. And this was somebody who actually knew me like pretty much from the day I moved. Not her, but one of our other coworkers was somebody that had known me pretty much from the day I moved to Illinois, and had been there for most of my glory days, I guess you could call them, the high shenanigans days before the wife got me to settle down. And she was running her mouth, and we had like an employee Christmas party coming up, and my buddy, who was the guy who got me that job in the first place, was just like, "You really need to stop with this. I'm going to drink every single person in the kitchen underneath the table tonight." Crap. And she's like, "Why? You guys scared? You scared a little girl's going to beat you?" And he says, "No, but Aaron might take that as a challenge, and you will die." She's like, "I'm not scared of him." And I'm like, going on and on and on. She was running around talking all this smack about, like how none of the cooks could outdrink her and all this other crap. She's like, "You guys all think you're just hardcore partiers. I'll show you how hardcore we are." And then finally, my buddy was just like, "Aaron, get her." I was like, "Well, I did get permission from my wife to get a hotel room tonight if I get too fucked up. So let's do this." And so we sat down, and the bartender, at the instruction of my buddy, brought over 2 bottles of vodka and 2 shot glasses. And the girl's looking, and she's like, "What the hell?" And I'm like, "This one's mine. That one's yours. Keep up." And just started throwing back shots. And
Ugh.
and she was looking at me after about 6, and she was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm like, I thought you could drink anybody in the kitchen under the table. She's like, you just did like 6 shots in like 2.5 minutes. It's like, yeah, that's how you drink people under the table. It's a sprint. Let's go. Come on, catch up. And she just looked at me and she's like, something's wrong with you. No, no, this isn't fair. And then we had a good laugh about it. And I was like, okay, can I go back to enjoying myself now? Because realistically, I don't want to sit here and pound vodka all night. I want to get the expensive whiskeys off the shelf.
Yes.
I want bourbons and scotches, and I want them now, and I want good stuff. I don't want anything that says Cuddy Sark or blended. And yeah, then myself and a couple of the management tier type peoples put a pretty healthy dent into the bourbon supply that night.
Good.
It was a very nice. Honestly, I wish I could remember more of it a little more clearly to it. And we cracked into all the good stuff. We had Woodford's. There's some, I think, Angel's Envy, and I mean, there were some really fancy things that I don't remember what they were because it's like, you know, we've been drinking for 5 hours. Now you break out the good stuff, and
Yeah. When you get the chance, like high end spirits, because they're not available often, and especially if somebody else is offering them, that's like
oh
a
yeah,
that's a huge like, yeah, no, I'll take it. I might feel bad because you're about to spend a whole lot of money, but I'll get over that real quick. Yes, I will take that
yeah,
glass. I was just at the Brandy Library in New York City not too long ago. I think back in September, and uh, and there is a big difference when somebody else is paying for it and when you're paying for it, because I was paying for this trip around, and um, I was not going to pass up because I wasn't going to be able to see these whiskeys again. So I took the hit, and then I shared it with friends. But the experience of having that, like, the once in a lifetime kind of deal, you know what I mean? Like, this shit's from 1922. I'm not going to get the chance to drink this again. Yeah.
yeah. Anything that's pre-prohibition, if you see it, you gotta have it.
Yeah, and it's not good. Like like, not that it's not. Let me take that back a little bit. This is people make really mad. It's very different than what we think of whiskey today. Because how
Yeah,
things are processed and how things are made and aged and everything's different than it was back then. And so you gotta look at it. You can't judge it through the same lens that you judge whiskeys that you buy today off the shelf. You've got to kind of pull yourself away from it and re-engage it as something unique and different, and pick apart the parts that are good. It was a little dry and a little hot for me, but man, you can't miss that chance. And it
yeah.
sucks. I made sure that was one thing I made sure is I got that stuff up front, and then the rest of the night we sipped fucking whatever. It didn't really matter. But we got the good stuff came first, and then we settled into more economically sustainable whiskey choices for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, because it's. I mean, you could definitely put a house payment down drinking if you're not careful.
Oh, I think we did. It was gross. It was sort of, you ever get those nights where you get the check, it's going to be intense. You just got to brace yourself. You look at it, you're like, oh God, like, just get this done.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times. Now that's actually one of the nice kind of fringe benefits just to being me is I've spent a lot of time in positions where it was like it was a work related expense. It was you know,
Score.
it was a case of membering. Like I worked at a couple of private clubs as a chef where I'm like, this is a member engagement event. This is yeah, we're going out to a bunch of clubs in downtown Chicago on a Friday night, but it's member engagement, so this tab is getting submitted and expensed. And we would run up, a couple grand. And be like, oops. Oh well, let's see, what account number is this getting billed to? Not food. We're gonna bill this one to member services.
Hospitality.
Yeah, and yeah, so I've been able to pull off some pretty ridiculous feats over the years,
Nice.
um, in the name of business and client engagement and customer satisfaction. There's a lot of different, buzzwords you can stick to it where it's like, yeah, no. One company I work for every year they'd have a year-end management meeting, where we would go out to lunch, a luncheon meeting. And I don't think over the course of like 4.5 years, I don't think we ever walked away from a lunch where the tab wasn't at least $1,000.
Oof.
And there were only 8 of us. So, but we would get 4-course lunches, drinks, aperitifs, dessert wines, and it was just. Then the check would show up, and we'd be like, "All right, who's got the company card?
Yep.
1, 2, 3, not it here." And but it was also budgeted for, so it's not like we were doing anything wrong technically. Just like I said, fringe benefit.
Yep. Yeah. We would do, end of like event dinners and stuff. And we would do card roulette. So basically everybody takes their credit card and tosses it into a bucket and they shake the bucket up. And then somebody pulls out, whoever card gets pulled is who's paying for the meal. And so that was always, I never got pulled. So I got super lucky because some of those,
damn it, who
some
put
of those,
a Blockbuster card in here?
right? Oh my God. Yeah. There's a couple times where those bills were insane. So I got lucky and avoided that.
It sounds like it, because I've done that a few times myself, where it's like, come on, no whammies, no whammies,
Yep.
no whammies. Yeah. All right, I'm not getting divorced today. Because ironically enough, pretty much every time I was in a scenario like that was something where I was out on my own without appropriate spousal supervision.
Yep.
So, like, what do you mean you guys credit card rouletted for dinner tonight? And I'm like, well, it wound up working out. Yeah, well, what was the bill? It doesn't matter. We didn't pay it.
Yeah, it wasn't my bill, so it's none of my business.
But
yeah,
and we would do it not even for like fancy going out. Sometimes me and a couple of my buddies, just because we're dumb, we'd we'd go to Hooters for like 12 hours, and believe it or not, you can run up a pretty hefty tab at 12 hours in Hooters.
You can run a hefty tab up at 12 hours anywhere. So yeah, Hooters, that'd be a rough one, because that's 3 rounds of wings easily. Every 4 hours.
It was 2 of my chef buddies and myself, and it was just, we had this goofy tradition where on Good Friday we would go out for wings, and it was always just, we're going out for lunch, it'll be fine. And we found out that apparently Hooters has a policy when it comes to drinks after how many they will cut you off for. So we managed to get cut off 3 times in one session because just between ordering cocktails and beer, we would confuse people. And so we were ordering pitchers of beer and then different, whiskeys or vodkas or whatever. And then we would order some wings or some shrimps, and then we would order some more beer. And then the waitress was like, "Look, guys, I'm sorry to do this, but I got to cut you off." And we were like, "Okay." And then her shift ended, so we got a new waitress. And so we got another couple of rounds from her before she realized that she shouldn't have been serving us, because the manager came over and cut us off. And then the manager's shift ended, and so the new manager came in. And when the new manager came in, the waitress started serving us again because she knew we were going to tip the shit out of her. And so the new manager came on and realized we were there when he got there, and he cut us off a third time. And I think the bill was $500 or something like that. I mean, for the 3 of us over the course of like a day.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
It's not terrible, but it was still like, it was at a Hooters. It's really hard to spend that much money at a Hooters.
Yeah, it's still ouch, right? Definite pain, but nowhere near as bad as it could have been.
Yeah,
that could have been.
I mean, like $1.25 a piece wasn't terrible. So.
No, absolutely not for that long.
Or $1.50, whatever. Something like that.
I don't math good.
Yeah, it was an adventure. It was, and the ironic thing is, people were talking about us for years after that. Like, hey, those are the guys that got cut off 3 times.
That's like, the Hooters marathon team over there.
Yeah, like, what? Do they have our pitcher around here somewhere? Do not serve these assholes more than 2 drinks apiece. But
they have a strict 4-hour limit.
Yeah, it was interesting, and there was It was a very long night. Then shortly after that, my brother got roofied. That was fun. It was an interesting night.
Those are not like adjectives I would put together with like I got roofied. It was a great time. Like no,
Oh no,
you don't.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't get
or
roofied.
yeah.
It
Oh,
was
my brother got roofied. It was a great time. No,
well,
no.
yeah. Before my wife and I got married, when we were just kind of palling around and hanging out and whatnot, and my brother and I were we all decided we were going to go out for drinks one night because my brother and I were broke, and my now wife was like, "Well, come on, guys, let's go out." And we're like, "We don't have any fucking money. We're not going out." Um, and because uh, my parents wound up moving out of town, but we stayed, and so my brother and I were living together. My brother, my god brother, and I were the three of us got an apartment together, and so we decided to go out one night. And like I said, we're broke ass 20-something-year-olds. And my now wife was like, "Oh no, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. We'll go out. It'll be fun. We'll see some people. It'll be a good time." And we're like, we have like $8 between the two of us. This is gonna suck. We're gonna get one pitcher of beer, and it's gonna. Don't worry about it. And she was all dressed up and looking cute, so she knew fucking everybody at the place we were going to. So, oh hey, let us get you a drink. Let us get you. We drank for free for about 2.5 hours. And then some skeevy guy would not leave her alone. And he insisted on buying her a drink, and she did not accept drinks from people she didn't know. And he would not take no for an answer. So she was finally like, "Fine, I'll take a vodka and cranberry." And so she gets handed the drink. She walks over, puts it down in front of my brother, and he drank about half of it. And then he was face down on the table like 20 minutes later, like literally drooling. And yeah, we'd been there for about an hour or so. So we're not nearly drunk enough to be like blacked out, face down on the table, drunk. And we kind of picked him up, and he was like literally, his eyes were rolled back his head. He was drooling on himself. And I looked up to the bar, and the guy that had handed her the drink had already booked out the door when he saw she wasn't the one drinking it.
Oh shit.
And yeah, so I went to the bartender. I'm like, "Where's this fucking asshole that gave her that vodka cranberry?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I don't know. I've never seen that guy before. He took off already." And I'm like, "Well," and then they're like, "Dude, what's wrong with your brother?" I'm like, "We think he roofied it." It's like, because he thought she was drinking that drink, and instead she gave it to him. And he goes, "Yeah, I thought it was weird that she got a mixed drink because my wife was never a big mixed drink drinker. She always just drank beer." So he's like, "Yeah, I really thought it was weird. She ordered a vodka cranberry." I'm like, "Yeah, well, now you see where that went now." And like we kind of poured the rest of the drink into a napkin, and there was like a bunch of shit floating in the bottom of the glass.
Oh,
I'm like, "Bro, you got roofied." And it kind of
yeah.
sucked because I had to like fireman carry him out to the car. And thankfully, this was before I got all like fat and out of shape. So I picked him up and, walked him out to the car, but completely ruined my night. I was like, "Inconsiderate bastard getting roofied. What's wrong with you?
How dare you?
How dare you spoil my night?
By
I'm out with
getting
my
drunk.
lady friend, and you
Yeah.
got drugged."
And you got drugged. Yeah.
And it was actually the funniest part of it was like the next morning, because he had no idea how we got home. He had no he's like, "Last thing I remember, we were sitting in the bar. What the fuck happened? How drunk did I get?" And I'm like, "Bro, I don't know how to put this. You got roofied. Somebody gave you the date rape drug." And he was like, "What?" I'm like, "But don't worry. He was very nice when he left." And he's like, "Fuck you." I'm like what? He didn't want it to go to waste.
He was borderline, gentle. It was,
He seemed very tender.
he was a
very
handsome
considerate.
fella. Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was.
He helped me carry you up the stairs.
He held your hair back. It was beautiful. Yeah.
He's "Fuck you, bro." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm not the one who got fucked there, buddy.
Yeah.
That's not funny." I'm like, It's a little funny."
I didn't get roofied. You got roofied. I'm good to go. What's your
I'm like,
problem?
"No, I thought it was hilarious." It was rough. I mean, he was literally dead weight sack of bricks. Like getting him into the apartment sucked. And then I was like so fed up and cranky by the time I got him to his bed. I just like kind of hung him over the edge and put a garbage can under his head so he didn't Jimi Hendrix himself.
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, if you're still alive in the morning, I'll make breakfast. And he said it was like literally the worst hangover he ever had. He felt like shit for
Bet.
like 3 days. I was like, yeah, that's rough, bro. I mean, at least you were with us, so you were safe. He's like, man, if I wouldn't have been using your old lady to get free drinks, I would have been fine. I'm like, yeah, see what she has to deal with when she goes out? He's like, yeah, it kind of sucks.
And that's, yeah, I mean, thank God, like he's good to go. You know what I mean? It wasn't a terrible thing, but there's a great example of the big differences, between you and I going to the bar and my wife going to the bar, for instance, and that's where it's bullshit. It sucks. I hate that that's a thing, and I hate that that's still a thing. I feel as though we, as a society, we should be beyond that. And
Yeah, we just need
and
to grow the
honestly,
fuck
if
up.
you, yeah, well, with like dating apps and all that shit right now, like, dude, there's other ways to find sexual conquest. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's you don't need to be nefarious. Like just go. There's somebody out there that will gladly friggin' hop in the sack with you, and y'all have a great time. Like that aspect of that part of it, and that it's so cringy to me. And fortunately, and that being the father of adult daughters, that's one of the things I worry about, because they go out and they have a good time and they party, and it's like y'all need to fucking pay attention.
Yep.
Pay the fuck attention. You know?
Situational awareness. It's a
Yep.
good thing.
Yeah, yeah. Don't let anybody give you a drink. Freaking get your own. Um, watch where it comes from, and that kind of stuff. And it's just it sucks that as a dad, I have to say those things. I wish that wasn't the case. That's that sucks.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm actually very proud of my son. Where I know he would not let that shit fly, and
Good.
he's even told me a couple of his buddies that he stopped hanging out with. He's like, yeah, they're fucking skeevy. He says I don't want to have to beat the hell out of them, so I just stop hanging out with them. I'm like, well, that's one way to look at it. Or we could beat the hell out of them just to be on the safe side.
Just for GP.
Yeah, I mean, if they're really that bad, well, they're not that bad yet. I just don't want to be there if they decide to make that choice. Okay, I mean, I can see the logic behind cutting a toxic person out of your life. That makes sense. Or we could go beat their ass. It's like, we're not beating their ass, Dad. Like, oh,
Come
come on.
on. I just want to
And
hit him
just let me hit him just once.
one time.
And it's kind of funny because I for my son's age, I'm actually on the younger side of the parent spectrum out of like most of his friends, because he just came along early in the equation. It happens. But so a lot of his friends, like his friends' parents, like his friends were the youngest of like four kids or whatever. So his parents were all older when he was younger, and I was late 20s, early 30s, and they would be sending their youngest kid over, and they'd be like, every time he comes back from your house, he's so well behaved for like a couple days. I don't know what it is, and I'm like, it's real simple. We expect respect when they're in our house. And I've made it perfectly clear that I don't have a problem beating somebody else's kid. And and they would always laugh and be like, "Oh, that's hilarious." I'm like, I'm not kidding. If your kid comes home with his ass whipped, it'll be for a good reason. I mean, I'm not going to abuse a kid. I'm not going to like punch him in the face or anything, but you know, on the other
Yeah.
hand, if he gets too out of pocket, he thinks I'll kick his ass, and that's all we need to worry about.
That's it. That's it. Intimidation factor. That
Yeah.
freaking wins the day.
And then a couple of his friends, one of his friends' mom in particular, actually like jumped in with both feet when I told her that. I'm like, I've never actually hit the kids, but they all think I will, and that works wonders. And so she got to the point where I would like stop by the house to pick them up when they were coming over to play or whatever, and she'd be like, "And don't forget, Alex's dad has permission to beat you." I'm like, I'm like, see, your mom said I can. That means you can't even go tell now.
I have backhand privileges. What's up?
Oh yeah. What did the four fingers say to the face? Like, yeah, your dad scares me, and then my kid would just be like, and just evil little shit that he was. I mean, because like I never beat my kid per se. I mean, he did catch a couple spankings, but just a couple. He's a pretty good kid, and I'm proud of how he turned out. Yeah, I never literally kicked his ass, but he had no problem telling people, "Oh yeah, no, my dad will kick my ass." I'm not. No, no.
Don't say that out loud. Yeah.
Oh no, I had a couple trips to the like principal's office, or yeah. Did you? So we asked Alex why he seems like he's been distracted lately, and he told us you hit him with a bat last week, and I'm like, what? I what now? Like, have you taken a good look at me? I'm pretty sure if I hit him with a bat, there would be a mark. I mean, if we're gonna go down this path, and I have to like answer to the cops and everything, can you send him in here real quick so I can make sure he's not lying?
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a bat I can borrow? We don't even have a bat. I left it at the batting cage one night when I was out drinking with my friends. I don't have a bat anymore. He comes walking back in like, he didn't really hit me. I'm like, yeah, okay, see what happens when you tell the principal that I'm beating you with a bat? I have to take time off of work to come explain to her that I'm not hitting you with a bat. And the principal's like, oh yeah, I kind of figured you weren't hitting him with a bat. He doesn't have a mark on him. Exactly. It's like, well, since you're here, would you be interested in coming in to do career day for the kids? Oh fuck. I knew there was a reason.
That was the hook. Hey, we need to
Oh
talk
yeah.
about your son. Oh, but while you're here.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that happened twice. Two different schools. Like, since you're here, would you mind talking to us about X, Y, and Z? Like, so there's not actually a problem with my kid? No, man, fuck you.
Yeah.
Mr. Aaron, would you mind chaperoning this field trip next week? We don't have any male chaperones, and we've got a few students that are a handful. So I get the problem, kids, if I come chaperone this field trip that you made me take a day off of work to come find out that you need me to chaperone a field trip. Well, you're good with the kids. And so next thing you know, I'm at the zoo with a bunch of behaviorally challenged children.
I don't miss chaperoning. Like that was I take that back. Like I enjoyed every time. I would always end up getting yelled at by the teachers before the kids did. Because I'd get them like all ramped up and going. And my youngest, Annie, she was the greatest because she would always be like, we'd get in and we'd sit down on the bus and get ready to roll. And she'd be like, Dad, you don't get yelled at today. And I'd be like, oh, okay. I'll try real hard. And I would always get yelled at. We'd go to like the kids' museums and stuff, and I would be the one like doing all the interactive exhibits and shit. And the rest of the chaperones would sit there like, what are you doing? I'm like, this is awesome. That was always an adventure. I didn't mind that. I had a good time. Made all the kids freaking, at least my kids, just kind of. So at one point in time, I had, if I caught them like standing off to the side, just shaking their head with their eyes closed, I'm like, yes,
like
I won.
I win parenting today.
I successfully dadded today.
Yeah, I did that a few times myself. Although my favorite one was literally the trip to the zoo where the teacher, as they were dispensing the groups, told me, you're going to need to keep an eye on this kid because he's going to be a problem. He has a tendency to wander off. He's very, very hyperactive, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, all right. And like all the other chaperones, I don't know why they didn't have the same mentality I did, where it's like, I came with a backpack. I had extra snacks in it. I had bottles of water. I had a first aid kit just to be on the safe side. I mean, it wasn't like a full on rucksack, but I was prepared. And like I would take all the kids' lunches and throw them in my backpack so we didn't have to carry shit. It made for a good day. This little ADHD kid that was supposedly such a problem for every chaperone he'd ever dealt with was attached to me like he was made out of Velcro for the entire day. He did not leave my side, and as much as I talk, this kid did not shut up the entire trip. And
you had snacks.
Well,
I would have done the same thing.
It wasn't even that. I mean, I had snacks, I had waters, I had a few different sodas just in case. I don't drink soda, but sometimes kids do. And then, but this kid was like seriously the entire trip, like basically trying to set me up with his mom. I'm like, dude, I'm married to his mom. And I'm like, the one kid in the whole field trip that I can't control. Yeah, that's no. I'm sure your mom's a very nice lady, and I'm sorry your dad's not around anymore. But yeah, no, I really don't think we should hang out, and I don't think it would be okay for me and your mom to be friends. I mean, it was entertaining to say the very least. And he's talking to my kid like, "You ever think about having a brother?" Like, oh, stop. Oh, it was brutal. Funny, but
It's
brutal.
so funny. So
Yeah.
funny. Yeah. Kids are great.
Yeah.
And
And
then,
then,
and then
well, and then I told my wife about it, and she's like, "We're not having sister wives." Like, oh, you got jokes.
I can barely manage one. I can't even fathom the multiples. Like, like
Yeah, and I don't get that one. I'm like, I can barely handle your ass. I don't need extra crazy in the house.
I deal with multiple personalities. I couldn't actually deal with multiple humans. Like, jeez.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, no, no. Wives are fantastic. We should all have as many as we can handle.
yeah. Yep. And I got that. I'm living the dream.
Yep. For just a second time, kind of close things up, tell everybody where to find you again, and yeah, I guess we'll wrap things up for today. It's a fun little talk. We'll have to do it again sometime soon.
I hope so. I absolutely hope so. Find me everywhere. I'm really active on Twitter. Whisky_Y is my Twitter handle. So if you want to reach out to me, that's probably the best place to do it. I'm on Instagram as well. Why Whiskey Podcast? Search that, you'll find me. And again, I'm on every podcast platform I think that's out there to be on. So you can find Why Whiskey again every other week. Took a couple months off. Had to get some personal affairs in order with the house and retirement and all that shit. So, but now that all that's kind of settling into a manageable rhythm, hoping to get back into a regular schedule of things. So look for me every other Friday at 6 a.m. New episode drops where I talk about history, I talk about whiskey, I talk about how the two interact. I have a few shows with whiskey folks and try to get guests on to talk about a myriad of topics. So check us out, enjoy, and if you got any questions or anything, hit me up, and I'll be happy to talk.
Alrighty, excellent. And so, thanks for listening, everybody, and that's what we had to say. Thanks for listening to another episode of I Had to Say It. If you liked what you heard, leave a review, give us a follow, give me some feedback. And if you didn't like what you heard, leave a review, give me a follow, give me some feedback. I'll try and fix it. Check us out on all the social media platforms at I Had to Say It Podcast is the trigger for all that stuff, for the search term. And if you want, check out the website, www.ihadtosayitpodcast.com. There's links to people that have been involved with the program, things I've talked about. There are some links available for some merch that we're working on, and there are ways to contact us there as well. And thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.